Hello lovely people, my name is Emma and it's been a really long time since I've been in front of this camera. So this is my first video back as in actually filming since kind of having my brief hiatus of kind of 6 weeks or so. I put out a little bit of content over the past 2 weeks, but I filmed that pre going away for a bit of a break. So I'll do a little bit of a life update at the very end. But I'm sure you are here for my Non-Fiction November TBR because you've seen the title of the video. So Non-Fiction November is a month-long reading challenge or readathon, reading initiative, which is hosted by a book Olive. This is its 7th year and the idea is it is to focus and prioritise reading non-fiction. To officially take part, all you have to do is read one non-fiction book, but the goal is to really try and read more non-fiction than you normally would and shine a spotlight on how great non-fiction is as a genre and subgenre of booktube, because it doesn't get as much love as fiction, but it's still just as interesting. Anyone who's been a regular on my channel for any length of time knows that I absolutely adore non-fiction, and off the back of being inspired by Non-Fiction November, I actually host 2 different non-fiction readathons each year, one on nature writing and one on history. So this is right up my street. It's one of my favourite times of the year. So there are 4 prompts that are optional, and I do have 2 books for each prompt. I am not expecting to get through even half of the books. Since starting my course, which I'll talk about in my life update, my reading has kind of fallen off a bit of a cliff. So if I can even get to like 3 of these books, I will feel really, really accomplished for the month of November. But I wanted to show you some of the options because I don't know which ones I want to read, and it's just a lovely way of shining a spotlight on more books that people will be interested in. Non-Fiction November, all of the prompts are just a single word that you can interpret however you want. So like I said, the first prompt is collection, and for that I have 2 books. The first one you won't have seen, in fact both of them you won't have seen yet because I bought them since I last recorded. So it's like a mini book haul for you. So the first one is The Whole Picture by Alice Procter. This is the colonial story of the art in our museums and why we need to talk about it. So I thought that this would fit really nicely into collection because museums are essentially just a collection of items, objects, artwork, things that sort of have some kind of value. And it is no secret that British museums are basically just filled with all of our colonial imperialist past, and many of the items do not belong to Britain and were potentially taken under less than ethical circumstances, shall we say. I'm really interested in museums, the art world, art history, and also our interactions with the art world and sort of the economics and sort of social side of things around what we do and don't value as a society within art and museums. So I think this one is going to be very, very interesting. It's definitely something that has been popping up in conversations online a little bit more, and it's definitely something that Britain kind of as a whole, certain areas of Britain anyway, are trying to confront colonialist past and sort of see what should we be doing about these things. There was a whole conversation about statues last year, so I think that this is going to be really, really interesting and also be great to kind of expose me to all sorts of new artists that I haven't necessarily heard of and learn a lot more about their cultural backgrounds. So very excited for this one. It was a spur of the moment buy, but I couldn't resist when I saw it on the shelf. One that will hopefully be a little bit more light-hearted is Our Zoo by June Mottershead. This is the biography or autobiography of June, whose father started Chester Zoo. This was actually made into a BBC mini-series several years ago now, and Chester Zoo, he has sort of a slightly strange start in the 1930s. I think he was suffering from PTSD post First World War, and this was a way of him kind of coping with it. So I think this will be interesting. I'm tying it in with collection because it is a collection of animals, and how did that collection form? Zoos do not have the best history in the world, and it's something which I read a bit about in David Attenborough's autobiography about how he financed a lot of his documentary making by zoos basically being like, go to this island and nick a bunch of animals, bring them back for us. Yeah, cracking, mate. So I will be really interested to see how this zoo got started and sort of some of the ethical considerations in there. But also it is going to be a really sweet story about animals, and I went to Chester Zoo on my honeymoon recently, so I couldn't resist picking up a book about it because I adore zoos so much. They're so good. So yes. So the next prompt is industry, and for that I have an audiobook which is How to Do Nothing, Resisting the Attention Economy by Jenny Odell, not O'Donnell, Odell, apologies. So this is sort of a self-help / economics-y type book that is looking at the kind of industry of just human attention and human productivity that we definitely have a problem with in today's society. This idea that you have to be constantly working on something, being productive, creating, you know, generally utilising your experiences constantly, and the idea of just being able to relax. This was quite popular last year, I think, with the lockdown last year, and some people, myself included, being furloughed and being pulled away from the working world. It's very interesting to see kind of how are you spending your time and what do you value on. So I do think it will be interesting to see how kind of capitalism and capitalistic narratives on productivity are used to try and like basically benefit from humanity to potentially the expense of each individual. So I really don't know which direction this book is going to go, but I'm intrigued, and I I quite like the idea of like the book is almost kind of flouting the idea of industry and also looking at the industrial complex of productivity. The next book that I also have for this prompt is one that I'm actually partway through, but I'm perfectly fine because I'm not going to finish it before October. I've been chipping away at it for ages, and that is Gulag by Anne Applebaum. This was actually recommended to me by a book olive, who is the host of this readathon, absolutely years ago now. She's a big fan of it. Big fan of Russian history in general. This is looking at the Gulag, which was a kind of slight prisoner camp, slight concentration camp, slight work enforced labour camp, and like there were many of them all across Russia for about 80 years. And it's looking at the extensive history of the Gulag as a social phenomena and sort of tool for society within Russia. So I thought this would be interesting and tie in nicely with industry, because it is about using this to, like, at certain points they were sort of labour camps, and using to like enforce labour to generate profit and revenue for the sort of Russian society as such, and kind of Russian country. Like I said, I have started it already. I started months ago. I'm chipping away at the audiobook. The audiobook's like 18 hours long or something crazy. It's quite a big book, and the font is minuscule in here. So I'm definitely not going to have it finished before the end of the month. I'm definitely going to allow it to drift into November, and because it's so harrowing and intense, like, you know, it's awful conditions these people are living in. It's one that I can't listen to like all the time, because sometimes you just don't want to be in that kind of a mood. So that's another reason why it's taking me so freaking long to get through this book. But I am really enjoying it, but I need to be in the right frame of mind to continue enjoying it, if that makes sense. So hopefully you're going to finish this one. The next prompt is style, and for that I hopefully have some that are a little bit more lighthearted than the Gulag. And one of these is The Queens of Animation: The Untold Story of the Women Who Transformed the World of Disney and Made Cinematic History by Nathalia Holt. So this is going to be a bit of a mixture of art history and history of sort of cinema and media, and basically it's looking at the group of women who have slipped under the radar, who were working for Disney. I thought this would be good for style, because Disney definitely has a very distinctive style for their animation, and presumably these women were sort of pivotal in helping to form that at a certain point. And I really love history books that shine a light on forgotten voices, especially women throughout history. So this one I think is going to be fantastic. Natalie from Curious Reader, she was the one who actually I first saw this on her channel, and she spoke very highly about it. So I've had it on my e-reader for quite a while, and I would like to try and prioritize this one. I'm sure it's going to suck, because it talks about sexism, domestic abuse and workplace harassment. So it's, whilst more lighthearted than the Gulag, still not an absolute breeze of a book, shall we say. And then the next book that I'm going to hopefully get to for style is Threads of Life: A History of the World Through the Eye of a Needle by Clare Hunter. I'm a big fan of needlecraft and fabric craft and kind of crafting in general, and this book is more looking at kind of the way that fabric and fabric craft has been used to make a statement, speak out, kind of have some sort of voice. So we look at the political propaganda in medieval France to the secret treason in Tudor England, from the mothers of the disappeared in Argentina to First World War soldiers with PTSD. And it's looking at the ways that fabric craft and creating through fabric, which is often considered women's work in many ways, has helped to shape sort of society and political movements. So style, because naturally there is going to be some discussions about fashion in here, I would assume, and fashion's been used very much throughout fashion has been used by women throughout history as a way of kind of making a statement. So I think this book is going to touch on that, and that's kind of my idea for it. But I'm really excited about this one, and isn't the cover just, oh my god, amazing. The last prompt is treatment. So for that one I have The Stopping Places: A Journey Through Gypsy Britain by Damien Labasse. Damien Labasse is grandmother, I believe, was Romany, and it is about him trying to find out about his history and his past, and kind of going through the common kind of travelling routes along Britain, and in doing so finding out about the history of gypsies, but also how modern gypsies are treated. So that's why I thought treatment would be good in there, because it is going to be looking at how a group of people often marginalised have been treated by a society. I'm assuming again it's going to be a bit of a bummer, but I'm hoping, because it is this sort of memoir, autobiography going on some kind of sort of travel writing kind of vibe, that it might be a little bit easier to read than some of the other ones that I've got down here. They're a little intense, a little beefy, a little big. We like chucking in a few memoirs to sort of lighten the load of reading, compared to the more sort of strictly fact-based, more academic-y books for non-fiction. So for me, memoirs are my lighter reading. The last book I have on my list is Mediocre by Ijeoma Oluo. This is the subtitle of this is The Dangerous Legacy of White Male America. So this author wrote So You Want to Talk About Race, which I started in Non-Fiction November last year, but I just started a brand new job and I could not cope with anything that hardcore at all, so I haven't actually got around to finishing that book. But this one is very much looking at the idea of kind of the white male American and sort of the escalation of white male rage, especially in America with the election of Donald Trump, and sort of a lot of the events that have happened in kind of global sort of Western politics over the past 5 or 6 years, shall we say. So I've read a few different books in this kind of an area, sort of looking at male entitlement and sort of the way that as we are gaining more rights and opening up more conversations, the backlash that comes from the white male, whether it be white male American or white male British person, or sort of just the white male in Western society in general. So I think this one is going to be incredibly intense and harrowing. I have it on audiobook that I think will help to get through it, but it's going to be a hard-hitting one. But I thought this would be interesting to look at the treatment of the white male American and how they view their own treatment, and sort of the reactionary backlash that's come from changes in society more recently. I hope that makes sense. It's been very well received, so I'm quite excited about that one in some ways, and I do like a bit of sort of feminism, social philosophy sort of a vibe, so I think that would be good. So that's my incredibly ambitious, definitely not going to get to all of them, TBR, and we will see how many we get through. And yeah, life update, I'm doing really well. The course is going really well, the wedding went great, the honeymoon was lovely. I'm back on a sort of like a posting every week, every other week kind of vibe. It will really just depend on sort of assignments and exams and all that kind of thing, of which my course is one that, rather than it all happening at the end of an academic year, they sort of like modular, you get exams and assignments spaced throughout the entire 2 years. So I do have one coming up mid-December, and I've also got an assignment due like around November time. So we'll see how that goes with my reading. Like I said at the beginning, I'm not reading anywhere near as much, but I am still reading. And I do intend to do a sort of big wrap up of everything that I read in August, September and October, broken into probably fiction and non-fiction for you guys, just so that we kind of wipe the slate clean, you know what I've read, and we can kind of move forward, because I did read a fair amount on honeymoon, and I did read a lot in those I'm still reading in those 3 months. So yeah, that will be coming out fairly soon, and I should have some non-fiction November recommendations coming out soon. So I'm still here, I'm still posting, but I'm also quite busy and quite distracted by other stuff. But everybody's doing really well, and everything's great, and I'm having a good time. So that's kind of me. Yeah, so have a wonderful reading week. I hope that you're taking part in Non-Fiction November. Leave your TBRs down below, link stuff up, you know the drill, and all the announcement videos and everything will be down below for Olive's channel. Have a wonderful reading week. I said that already. I gotta go. I'll chat to you soon. Bye.